All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Couch Warrior podcast. I'm your host, as always, Mike, and today for UFC 281, I'm joined by one of the best in the game, Danny Lags. What's up, man? Thank you for pulling up. How are you doing, man? And are you excited for this card at all?
Yeah, appreciate the intro. Yeah, dude, super excited for this card. It's a banger of a pay-per-view, and obviously main event, great fight, one of the best they can put on. So yeah, hyped to get into it. Ton of great betting spots.
Yeah, man. I'm hoping for some good spots to keep opening up with the props. We were talking about it a bit before the show. This is in my backyard. I'm from New York, so I don't have tickets as of now. I'm
Gotcha.
hoping for a hookup. I might have something come in clutch one of these
Nice,
upcoming
nice.
days. For anybody watching, by the way, the tickets did drop. They did drop from like 500 something dollars for the worst seats possible to like 360 for the worst seats possible. Not much better, but worth noting. But all right, so we can get right into the fights. We've got 14 fights to go through. It's quite a card. I've already got a bunch of bets down, and let's do it. So for this first fight, we've got Carlos Ulberg versus Nicolae Negumereanu. Ulberg is 6'1" and 0. He's 31 years old, 6'4" with a 77-inch reach, training at a city kickboxing. On the other side, we've got Negumereanu. He's 13-1 and 0, 28 years old, so he is 3 years younger. 6 feet tall. He's 4 inches shorter. He's got a 78-inch reach, so he's still got that 1 inch reach advantage. And he is training out of Extreme Couture. So for this first fight, why don't you start us off, Danny?
So I already have one play, and then I'm looking to add, like we talked about a little bit before the show, looking to add on a violence prop in this spot. But I like the Ulberg side here, quite frankly. In terms of like the actual matchup itself, I think like in terms of the striking, Ulberg blows him away, quite frankly. Like Nick is super hittable. In terms of the grappling, like, yeah, Nick will push a pace, but he's not a great wrestler, quite frankly. And then if you want to talk about like a market perspective, obviously, like it didn't look great for Ulberg in his fight against Kennedy, got knocked out, but he was a minus 225 favorite. First round, what up, Mushroom? Goes out there, he throws 100 strikes, lands 8 of them. He puts a hurting on Kennedy. And then obviously slows down by Kennedy's pressure. It's a UFC debut as well. Could be some jitters on top of that. And then so a couple fights down the road, Kennedy fights Nick, and it's a pick'em. Obviously, we see that how that fight goes. Kennedy's a little gun shy first 2 rounds, then pours it on in that third round, but it's a fight that's just much closer than it needed to be for Kennedy, quite frankly. And then you go to his next fight with Ihor Potieria, a guy that, quite frankly, I think is a fraud. Like he's a decent striker, but in general, striking schedule not that great. And that was a pick 'em. And Nick was a slight dog as well. So we're getting a similar line as well with a much better striker here, who I think, again, the guy, he did slow against Kennedy, but he threw an insane amount of volume. I think honestly, Ulberg finds a knockout pretty early in this spot. I'm looking to add the under 2.5 as well, minus 150.
Yeah, man, we line up perfectly here. I'm on Ulberg. I think the opener was correct, honestly, the minus 200. I think a lot of people are kind of banking on Negumereanu, tiring him out, wearing on him, maybe using that grappling. First off, I don't think his grappling is that great, like you said. Second off, city kickboxing, they train that grappling defense. Like we see it clearly. You look at Israel Adesanya, it's something that they train there. It's something most of them are good at. I'm looking at you, Brad Riddell. But for the most part, they do well there. In the striking, I think it's not even close. Like Negumereanu's got, I have it down, 39% striking defense. I mean, he's going to get hit all day long here. The output goes to Ulberg, much straighter strikes. He's going to hit that target first. Talking about violence, I actually played the fight doesn't go the distance yesterday. I got it at minus 140, which is cheaper than the under 2.5. Was cheaper than the 2.5. It's sitting at minus 150 now. It's still cheaper, which is really weird. But right, it doesn't really make much sense because that line opened up for the over 2.5. But
yeah, I mean, I guess only one book has the under 2.5. It looks like it's in Betway. So for the most part, like the under 2.5. So
it was on Bet Online yesterday, so they took it
really?
off.
Okay.
Yeah, I know it was on yesterday, so I guess they took it off, which is sus. But I did play that fight doesn't go. I think Ulberg's gonna find a finish. Honestly, I'm thinking about playing like a sprinkle on his round 2 KO because I kind of think that's where it's going to happen. Round 3, it'll get dicey. It's going to depend who's got that cardio. I hear a lot about Negumereanu maybe winning in round 3. I just don't really see it. So, but we line up here. I am going to play Ulberg money line. Did you play a money line?
Yeah, minus 120. Yeah, just a unit. And then I'm going to play a unit on the under as well. Or the fight doesn't go, I guess, whatever DraftKings opens it up as, because from what it looks like kind of like what you touched on, the fight doesn't go, for the most part, has been open like different lines. Like some books have minus 200, whereas some has minus 150. So it's like, I will definitely take them. 150 doesn't go. It opens up as that.
Yeah, I mean, light heavyweight, right? 2 power punchers, a really good striker in Ulberg. I feel like that's a good spot. And I'll be playing his money line too. I've been trying to time it. Like he was at minus 117, I think, today. And now there was some pushback, minus 120 again. Money's coming in on Negumereanu again. We'll see. I'll probably just play him after the show and call it a day. But we can move on for now. For this next fight, all right, this one's fun. We've got Julio Arce versus Montel Jackson. Arce is 18-5-0. He's 33 years old, 5'7" with a 70-inch reach, and he's training out of Tiger Schulman's MMA. Montel Jackson's 11-2-0, 30 years old, so he's 3 years younger, 5'10". He's got a 3-inch height advantage, 75-inch reach. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage, and I've got him training out of Pura Vida BJJ. So I'll start this one off. I've been torn, honestly. I've been pretty torn. I've always been high on Montel Jackson. I really have. And then when Julio Arce came down to bantamweight, I was honestly pretty high on him too. I thought he'd do good work there. And, he's been having a hard time, and I also wouldn't say that his last win is that impressive against Willie Cat Santos. I think Willie Cat's an animal. I'm very impressed with him overall, but he came in on short notice. So to me, that doesn't mean all that much. Arce's got really good boxing. He's a very good counter striker. He's really good at that. Technique for technique in the striking area, I give it to Arce, honestly. I think he's just cleaner. I think he's faster. In the pocket, he's for sure going to have the advantage here, in my opinion. At distance, I mean, it's hard to say that Jackson won't have the edge. He's much bigger, much longer. He's got a really nice jab, a really nice 1-2. I would love more combinations coming out of him, but overall, he's got really good striking. He's more accurate than Arce, which I was a little surprised about. He's got a 55% striking accuracy, 37% on the side of Arce. And I think the grappling here is a big question mark because we do know that Montel Jackson's a really good wrestler. We know he's an Olympic hopeful. He was going for it. I think he dropped out in 2013. He stopped trying because they voted to take wrestling out of the Olympics. So, he's got a high level of wrestling pedigree. And while Julio Arce's got a 94% takedown defense, we haven't really seen him fight a wrestler like Jackson. The only time someone's really shot on him a lot in one fight was Ige, who went 1-13. But Ige's not Montel Jackson. So I have a slight lean towards Montel. I don't know if I'm going to get to a play or anything like that. He's minus 200 right now. It's going towards Arce. Maybe I'll parlay him. I've got somebody in mind later on. We'll see. I'm going to wait it out. I think he should win. But I also think Arce is really live, and my gut was kind of telling me to just play him. So I might just stay off of this one overall. How about you, Danny? What are you thinking?
So I'll agree with you as well. The slight lean for me, Montel Jackson, but I would say I'm conversely on the opposite end. I'm not really highly of Montel Jackson. The guy's beating the guys he should, the Jesse Straders of the world, the JP Buys of the world. But quite frankly, he's not looking that great. The Buys fight, literally his last fight, super questionable. Almost got finished first round. You mentioned it a little bit. The guy on the feet doesn't throw a ton of combinations. There's not a lot of volume. Got good power. That's about it. But guy's got solid wrestling, and I guess that's really where again, like what you mentioned, that's where I come down to, and where I kind of think I don't really have any interest playing it. I think again, decent-ish favorite Montel makes sense, but I think Arce can make this competitive.
Yeah, one look that someone brought up to me that I thought was interesting was my guy Pat from Addicted to Combat. If you guys don't know him, he's actually live right now at the same time as us, so don't go watch his show, watch us. But make sure to check him out after. He's the man. He brought it up to me, Montel Jackson by sub, which is interesting. Jackson's only got 2 sub losses. Arce's been submitted 1 time, but the odds are Pretty good. Pretty good. It's sitting at Jackson by sub plus 800. I bet it'll open up even better at Bet Rivers or FanDuel. If it's like plus 1,000, I'm probably going to sprinkle that just because I do expect grappling. If we're on the ground, sub is always live. So it's something I would look at, but nothing I'm too confident on.
Yeah, it's not one I'm super interested from a betting perspective, quite frankly. I mean, maybe the line's a little ballooned out on the Montel side, but I like it, quite frankly.
Yep. All right. So we're on the same side. And we can move on to the next fight. We've got another Tiger Schulman's guy. This is so funny to me every time I hear their camp. Because when I was a kid, I went to Tiger Schulman's. I did Taekwondo there as like a child. And I remember it just being an absolute joke. So when I heard they had an MMA gym, I was like, no way these guys are any good. And in fact, they are pretty good. So we'll talk about the next one here. We've got Mike Trizano versus Seung Choi. Trizano's 9-3-0. He's 30 years old, 5'11" with a 71-inch reach, and he is training at a Tiger Schulman's. Seung Choi on the other side, he's 10-5-0, 30 years old, 6 feet tall, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So technically 1 inch taller, 75-inch reach, 4-inch reach advantage. And I've got him at my favorite camp, Sanford MMA. Now, real quick, before I pass the mic to you, Danny, I did want to mention the heights. When I saw 6 feet tall for Seung Choi and 5'11" for Trizano, it kind of just didn't add up to me. I know that the UFC messes up heights very often. Just look at Jairzinho Rosenstrike, 6'3". He's 5'9". So you always got to take it with a bit of salt. But I was looking at Seung Choi against Culibao. Culibao 5'10", and they're like the same height. So I think that's more accurate. I do actually think Trizano is going to end up being a little bit taller, but we're going to have to see. What are you thinking for this fight, man?
I think similar to the last fight, it's just kind of a mess of a fight, quite frankly. Like two guys that I don't have great reads. So I guess we'll start on the Choi side for me. Again, like a guy that got decent power on the feet, but not a ton of volume. Cardio looked pretty suspect in this Caceres fight. I haven't had money on him, like good or bad, but I just haven't picked his fights right. And then I like the guys that I think he should be able to beat, like the Caceres of the world, like the Kulibaos. He gets dropped by twice by Josh Culibao. You would never think that. So it's just a guy like I just don't have a great read on. And then on the Trizano side, it's just a guy that doesn't do enough in his fights. He's well rounded everywhere, decent striker, decent grappler, but he doesn't go to his grappling at all. And yeah, I mean, the big thing is like his finishing ability as well. It's pretty much none. So like, I think slate lean Choi makes sense. No interest in betting it. I guess, where's the under sitting at? Yeah, I don't have a ton of interest, but I think the under maybe plus 160 is probably not a bad look, but just not a fight I'm looking to have any money on.
Yeah, so honestly, this one was tough for me because both of these guys are my guys. I love winning money on them. I love losing money on them. I played Choi against Caceres, lost there. I played Choi against Culibao. Sorry about that. Thought for sure he was going to win that fight. Played him heavy. He did not win. So, and Trizano, Almeida, I think I just stayed off because I kind of felt like Almeida might chin him, which he did. The fight before that, Hakeem Dawodu, I backed Trizano, lost money there. Backed him against Ludovic Klein, won there, whatever. So I ended up playing Trizano. He was plus 155 when I did that. I played him for a unit. I just think this is a 50-50 fight. So I'm getting plus 155 on the dog. I like it. Like I said, I think he's bigger, even though that's not what the stats are showing. I think he's got the better output. I think that Seung Choi is a bit hittable. He's shown that recently, especially, Culibao dropped him 2 times. That is not a great look. Kind of noticed himself like just stepping in when he's striking, just putting his head forward, which is not a good thing that you want to be doing. I think it's going to be a close decision, probably. I think the under, maybe it's worth a look at plus 160. I kind of lean a little bit more towards the decision just because neither of these guys are finishing all that much. But yeah, I played just a unit on Trizano. I think it can go either way, but I'd rather take the dog at a 50-50 fight. So I'm on the Trizano side there. And we can move on to another fight that I actually placed a bet right before the show on this, and I hate myself for it. So we'll talk about it now. We've got Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Silvana Gomez Juarez. Karolina is 13-7-0. She's 37 years old, 5'3" with a 64-inch reach. and I've got her at American Top Team. On the other side, we've got Juarez. She's 11-4-0, 37 years old as well. 5'3", 63-inch reach. She's just given up 1 inch in reach, and she's training out of Entrim Gym. So it's my turn to start. And I mean, look, for me, it just really came down to this. Juarez is not good. Like, she's not good at all. She hasn't beat anyone good. She knocked down Vanessa Demopoulos, who I don't rate highly at all, and then still got submitted. She knocked out Na Liang. And honestly, I thought Na Liang was going to win that fight. I had money on her. And, you know, the woman loves to leave her chin up in the air. And Silvana Gomez Juarez found it and knocked her out straight. I just feel like other than that power punching ability, she's not showing much. Not in the UFC, not in the regionals. She's not offensively grappling. Her defensive grappling, we don't have much information on. I mean, Lupi took advantage of it, but that's Lupi. Karolina is not Lupi Godinez. That said, Karolina does have decent grappling. She showed it in her last fight. But for me, it honestly really came down to the striking. That's why I wanted to play her. I didn't remember the fight that well. Farrig, Karolina too. I went back. And her striking looked really good, in my opinion. Like, it looked pretty solid. She was hitting good combinations, keeping it crisp, keeping it tight. And I just feel like on the feet, if she's not getting knocked out by Juarez, like, she's got to avoid those big shots. Obviously, that's always live in MMA, right? But technique for technique, I think it's Karolina. Grappling, I think, goes to Karolina. Output, I think, goes to Karolina. Competition edge clearly goes to Karolina. Yeah, she hasn't beaten most of them, but it's high-level opponents. We keep hearing about her being a little chinny. She's been knocked out one time, and it was Andrade. Juarez, you know, she hits hard. I don't think she hits as hard as Andrade does. So I ended up playing Karolina. I played her. I got -107 on Bet Rivers. I played her for a unit. I don't want to put more than that. I just feel like she's actually the better fighter, and she's got to get knocked out to lose. And I don't like banking on lucky shots on big punches. So I took Karolina. How about you, man? What are you thinking?
Well, quick like sidebar here, not to throw any like misogynist vibes out there or anything, but like I swear I've had horrible reads, or not horrible reads, I should say, good bets that don't end up cashing on women's fights, and then I'm just like, I don't know how they. It just doesn't. I suck at women's fights, quite frankly. Like I had go through a couple of them. I had the Maverick fight under 2.5, most recently. I had, I guess, Lupi in a parlay against Angela Hill. Goes out there, doesn't shoot any takedowns. Turns out she's actually injured in that fight. Another fight. Dern Rodriguez, main event. I have the under there. Multiple opportunities to finish, and it is what it is. But yeah, so I just haven't had great reads overall. But for me here, I think Juarez does pack a solid punch. I think Karolina does leave some holes defensively. I think the under, I know a lot of people have been talking about the under. I think that's not a bad look as well, because I do think, again, like I said, Juarez could knock her out on the feet. I do think, obviously, the holes are there for Juarez in the grappling, but, like, Karolina's not a great wrestler. That's kind of my thing. Like, she's not a great wrestler. So that's kind of my pause on, like, why I'm staying off the under and why I'm just staying off the fight in general. But it's pretty low-level MMA.
Yeah, I actually pulled up the under while you were talking. It opened at +190, which I think is definitely the move, but at this point it's +110, and like, yeah, that doesn't entice me much for a women's MMA fight, even though I do think violence is going to be what happens here.
Yeah, I cashed big on the under with Na Liang, because I'm like, this girl's a punching bag. Don't think she's going to be able to grapple her, but if she is, she's going to pull off an armbar, and lo and behold, she gets knocked
out flat.
Yep.
It's MSG too. I mean, this is like more of like a narrative kind of thing, but you know, big stadium, MSG, big event. I feel like we might see more finishes than usual, but again, it's a narrative thing. I don't love banking on narratives, but we can move on to the next fight. A little bit more fun. We've got Ottman Azaitar versus Matt Frevola. Azaitar is 13-0, undefeated as a pro, 32 years old, 5'8" with a 71-inch reach. In terms of his camp, I had a pretty hard time placing him. So if you know better, Danny, just let me know. As far as I can tell, he's been training with Eagles MMA. He's been training at the UFC PI under Robert Barrero. Not completely familiar with him, but that's what I got based off of his Instagram. If you know any better, Danny, just let me know. On the other side, we got Frevola, 9-3-1, 32 years old as well, 5'9". He's 1 inch taller. 71-inch reach as well. And he's training out of Longo Weidman right now. I know he's down there in Long Island. Why don't you start us off here, Danny?
Yeah, so I was telling you before the pod a little bit, like some plays I was looking to get into, and this is one of them. The alternate unders are not widely available on most books, but love the under 2.5. It's minus 170. I'm seeing now on Bet Online. Yeah, I mean, on the Ottman side, the guy 13-0, 12 finishes. I mean, the only fight that does end up going the distance, I mean, the guy, he beats his ass, quite frankly, and slows down, gasses a little bit, and then ends up going the distance. But for me, like on the Ottman side, I mean, there's a lot of fights on his regional tape where it's like the guy's hittable, he gets dropped. There's spots where he gets out wrestled. He slows down in fights that actually extend outside the first round. I think there's a lot of holes that Frevola, if he stays conscious past that first 5 minutes, I think he could take advantage of it. Even on the feet, I think Frevola could knock him out. I think if Frevola does mix in the wrestling, like I said, I think you could find a finish, whether that's a ground and pound submission. But yeah, love the under 2.5.
Yeah, the under is definitely interesting to me. I've been holding off just because it's minus 170 now, and it opened up plus 135. Anyone who hit that is good job. That's a great bet. Yeah, for me, I was pretty torn. I love Frevola. I'm a big fan. I don't think that I don't like. Sorry about that. I don't take much from the Genaro Valdez fight. Like you look at Valdez's Dana White Contender Series fight, and that was a mess. It was an absolute mess. He won by knockout, but he got dropped like I think 1 or 2 times by a terrible opponent. Just not a very good look. And then Frevola knocking him out wasn't that surprising to me because I knew he was defensively unsound like that. I wanted to bet Frevola. I really considered it. I do think if we go to a decision, it's going to be him. I'm fairly confident in that fact. So what I ended up doing was I played Ottman Azaitar decision no action. I got that at minus 150. I do think more than likely if it finishes inside the distance, it's going to be Azaitar finding that knockout. I mean, the power on the man is ridiculous. If we go the distance, I do think it's Frevola. I think he's going to use his grappling. He's been trolling a little bit on Twitter. You know, he was saying he's going to fight in the pocket, and then he quote tweeted it. So clearly he's planning on grappling here. We don't have much information on the counter grappling of Azaitar. I mean, we haven't seen anything. He got shot on 1 time in the UFC. He's fought for all of 5 minutes in the UFC as well. So we really just don't know. So yeah, I like that. I didn't want to play it too much. Just played that, I think, for 1.5 units. Yep, that's exactly what I did to win 1. I just feel like if we get to a decision, I'm probably going to get a push. If we finish inside the distance, I probably think Azaitar is going to get that finish.
You know, it's funny actually. One of my buddies who was close to his brother when they were in the fights before in New York was saying that like he actually just like he loves to brawl. Like even though he has the wrestling background, like he can't stop himself from brawling. Even like at the camp too, it's like even though he has that wrestling background, he chooses to brawl and he loves it. Yeah, and that's the thing too. Even when they talked about this matchup, and there was like it's good advantages for him. Like it's like a good fight for him, and like they think he's going to brawl, like go out there and brawl and like be able to knock him out. And I think that's the thing too, like that I was saying, like Azaitar doesn't have a great chin. Like the guy's been hurt on the regional scene by much lesser competition. Frevola could chin him standing easily.
That's a pretty good point there. That's also why I've wanted to hit that under too, because I do think Frevola can find a spot. We'll see if I end up getting there. Once minus 171 is just it's like when you see a line and you see that people got plus money on it, and now you got to pay minus 170. It's like
see, I don't pay attention to like a lot of those. Like a lot of those openers are pretty soft, quite frankly. Like I was looking at it, it was around for like a couple minutes.
Yeah, they usually drop right away. That's true.
Yeah.
But all right, so we can move on to the next one here. This one is one that's got me scratching my head. I've got one play I'm thinking about here, and it's not a side. We've got Andre Petroski versus Wellington Turman. Petroski's 8-1-0. He's 31 years old, 6 feet tall with a 73-inch reach, and he's training out of Renzo Gracie, Philly. Turman on the other side, 18-5-0, 26 years old. He's 5 years younger, 6 feet tall with a 72-inch reach. So he's got a 1-inch reach disadvantage, and he's training out of Texera MMA with our title challenger tonight, Pereira. So, you know, I'll start this one off. I don't think highly at all of either of these guys. I mean, I've been trying to fade Turman pretty much every single time he's fought. That's worked out for me. It hasn't worked out for me. I certainly didn't think he'd beat Misha Serkinov. I certainly didn't think he'd beat him by submission. So that caught me with my pants down. The thing with Petroski, it's like it's confusing because he's training out of Renzo Gracie Philly, a really good camp, obviously, for submission grappling. He got that submission win over Maximov, which was impressive, but at the same time, like if you watch it, Maximov didn't do anything at all to defend. Why? I don't know. I don't practice BJJ, so I don't know the technical stuff there, but he just didn't do anything, got submitted. Petroski, it says he's never been submitted himself, but on the Ultimate Fighter, Brian Battle submitted him. He did with a ninja choke of all things. He got him tired out, and then he landed the choke. I really feel like Turman can possibly pull off something similar. I just don't know here. It's weird because I hate the striking of Turman, but yet I still think he's got the striking edge here. I don't think Petroski's a good striker whatsoever. We say he's improving, but he's still winging strikes. I mean, against Hu Zhaoang, I'm blanking on his name. You know what I'm talking about. He was getting hit a lot, and he should not have been. Against Michael Gilmore, of all people, once he tired out, Gilmore was landing. Gilmore was finding success. So there's no way in hell I can play Petroski at minus 200, something like that. There's just zero chance. And I don't want to play Turman either because I don't think Turman's good. I think he's got the striking edge, but I don't think it's enough. I think the grappling goes to Petroski, BJJ probably to Turman, but it's hard to tell. What I'm looking at is I'm seeing the over 1.5. DraftKings hasn't dropped the alternate totals yet, but on Caesars, it's minus 140. I kind of like that. I don't think we're going to see an early finish. I think both of these guys, they slow down as the fight goes on. I think if we're going to see a sub from either side, it'll be later on. I don't see a knockout necessarily, definitely not early. So I kind of like that over 1.5. That's probably the only way I'd consider playing this. I thought about maybe like fight ends in submission. I'm not seeing a line yet for that, but I also don't love playing that kind of thing when you've got two submission grapplers because that normally cancels it out. So what are you thinking for this one, man?
Yeah, I guess you started off great. I think it's two just low level, like just not great guys, quite frankly. Like I know Petroski's got all the skills in the world, but like the guy's got no cardio, and that's a huge red flag for me in terms of the striking. Low volume, got big power, but again, defense wide open. Horrible striker. Turman has the striking edge here, but to me, I think even if Petroski does gas out, I think he probably can land takedowns on Turman. Like Turman's not a great defensive grappler. Um, I guess I would say my issue. I guess we'll talk talking points. I guess for the over 1.5, my issue with that would be I guess Petroski's probably most liable to finish early. I guess for me, Turman late finish. Um, so I think the under 2.5 in general is probably a decent look, but it's just another fight where I'm not looking to play anybody. Turman's a guy like kind of like what you said, like he's kind of I don't know. He's got highs, he's got lows, but his lows are really low, quite frankly. Like last fight, quite frankly, like Serkinov. I mean, he's got him dead to rights. He's got a rear naked choke. It's in, it's off. Then he's almost dead to rights, and then round over. Then second round, Misha's looking decent, and then snatches up the armbar. It's like I don't really know what to get from this guy. So it's a clear pass for me.
Yeah, the Sam Alvey fight didn't help either when it when it comes to
When it comes to the lows, like the lows are low and the highs are not very high.
The only thing I'm thinking here is like maybe also like a Turman sub because we did say Petroski, he tires out. We did see him subbed when he tired out on the Ultimate Fighter by Brian Battle. It's plus 550 on Bet Online. No other books have it yet. I'm probably not going to play that. I don't know. Maybe I'll just pass this fight altogether. It's a bit of a mess of a fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, you could do Turman round 3's 12-1. I know they have Turman round round 3 TKO is 30-1.
The only problem there is Turman gets tired too. I feel like by round 3, it's anyone's game. They're both going to be just exhausted.
It could be. I think Petroski's gas tank is just atrocious. Quite frankly.
I mean, if Michael Gilmore is beating you up in round 3, there's a problem here.
Right, yeah. And, I guess we'll talk about that more. Well, not about that fight, the Hu Yaozong fight, though. I had the under 2.5 rounds, and that guy is in dominant positions for most of that fight. Doesn't get a finish. It's like Hu Yaozong is a horrible, horrible grappler. one of the worst out there. So I think Turman can probably survive, and that's kind of where I'm like 170 on the under, 2.5 could get sweaty, but I think it's a decent look.
All right. So we can move on to the next one. This one is slot. It's going to be interesting to say the least. We've got Molly McCann versus Erin Blanchfield here. Erin Blanchfield is 9-1-0. She's 23 years old, which is crazy. She's literally younger than me. 5'4" with a 68-inch reach. And in terms of her camp, I know normally she's at high altitude. I know she spent some time at elevation. Right now, her Instagram's showing me MK Muay Thai. So that's the stuff I'm going with. McCann on the other side is 13-4-0. She's 32 years old. 5'4", 62-inch reach. She's given up 6 inches in reach, which is terrible. And she's training out of Next Gen MMA. Danny, did you go last or did I? Do you remember?
You went first last fight, I believe, because that
All
was,
right, so
that was Petroski, yeah.
Why don't you start us off here, man?
So this fight, I mean, we want to talk about openers. This fight opened minus 260, and now everybody's kind of been piling in on, I think, the correct and deserved favorite side that is Erin Blanchfield. She's minus 400 now, minus 450 in some spots. I think she's improving in the striking. I know it's a work in progress. Obviously, we're seeing that in her last fight. JJ Aldridge was tagging her up a little bit, but I think the bread and where her bread gets buttered is that grappling. I think she has a dominant edge in that grappling over Molly McCann, and I think she's live for a sub here, quite frankly. I think it's a great matchup for her, and I know a lot of people were talking about it this week, like, why would Molly take this matchup? Quite frankly, I don't know. I don't think it's a great stylistic matchup for her. Maybe she just thinks that, it's a younger girl. She's the tough UFC vet trying to give her a vet lesson. People that are trying to, take that angle, that narrative with it. I would just go with like McCann decision. I think that's like 6-1 if you're going that angle. But no, I think this is a solid fight for Erin.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sprinkle that McCann decision that you were talking about. That's the way I'm kind of leaning. Because look, I mean, I've been a Blanchfield truther all the way. I think she's legit. I think she's going to be a contender, if not a champ at some point. I mean, she's 23 years old. She's dominating women like Miranda Maverick. That's impressive. That's a really impressive thing. That JJ Aldrich fight, that showed us a few things. She's definitely deficient in the striking. That's one thing it showed us. But also JJ's got good takedown defense. She did a good job of keeping on the feet for the most part. And that's why she was able to find success. Molly's not so much. She's got like a 46% takedown defense. That's not a good look against someone like Blanchfield. But for me, I don't like, depending on someone who's like a minus 400 favorite. She's 23, still kind of green in the UFC. I'm not convinced she's going to be shooting enough, and on the feet, yeah, there's a huge reach disadvantage here for Molly, but at the same time, Erin's just not that much of a striker. She's really not. There's not much there. She's still very green there. It's clear as day, and she's a bit hittable. Molly, she's going to bring that pressure, bring that output, and those are two things Erin hasn't seen yet. She hasn't seen output like Molly's going to give her, and she hasn't seen pressure like Molly's going to give her. Overall, I do think Blanchfield wins. I think the price is probably warranted. But, plus 600, I think we're probably going to get even better on the other books by decision. It's a cheap way to play it. I'm only going to put like 0.2 units on it to win 1.2 or something like that. Low risk, high reward, in my opinion. And Blanchfield should roll, but you never know. She hasn't faced someone like Molly, and I think the striking is a big question mark still right now. But all right, we can move on to something a little bit more competitive here. We've got Dominick Reyes versus Ryan Spann. Dominick is 12-3-0. He's 32 years old, 6'4" with a 77-inch reach, and he's currently training with Teixeira MMA. Ryan Spann on the other side, he's 27-0, 31 years old, so he's 1 year younger. 6'5", he's 1 inch taller, and he's got an 81-inch reach. He's got a 4-inch reach advantage. Training out of Fortis MMA. So first off, I got to say I hit Ryan Spann by sub over Ian Cutelaba, and I'm very proud of that hit over there. I did think it was going to happen exactly how it did. Ian just sticking his neck out like he does. That was dope. This one, it's had me torn just because we all know Dominick Reyes technique for technique is the better guy here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward there. I think the worst thing that's ever happened to him is that this split decision loss, or I forget if it was a split or not, to John Jones, the close decision loss to John Jones, because that's all that's been on his mind since then. You know, he went into that Jan Blachowicz fight thinking he's already the champion, and he did not look good, got finished. He went into the Jiri fight just talking about the John Jones thing over and over and over again. And I didn't think he looked terrible. Jiri is a shit-eating wild man. You know, he makes things crazy. And I thought Dominick Reyes dealt with him decently. He did hurt him like twice, once on the feet. And then the second time he hurt him with an up kick, if you remember that one. He literally knocked him out. Like Jiri fell flat on his face. The ref didn't call it because it didn't look like that right away. And then Jiri kind of woke up and just started punching him. But he literally got KO'd. He got KO'd with an up kick. You know, Dominick Reyes, he's good. It's just he's unreliable. He's very unreliable. He's consistently inconsistent. I do think he's the better striker. I think he's probably the better offensive grappler. We've seen Ryan Spann have a close fight with, we talked about him earlier, Sam Alvey of all people. Some people think Sam Alvey won that fight. So that's not a great look. I think that Dominick Reyes is the better striker. I think he's the better grappler. I think he's faced the better competition. I'm hesitant to play any money on him just because I don't know where his mind's at. I don't love how he can't get over this John Jones thing. I really think it's been affecting him. And it's hard for me to get to him at this price tag, knowing Ryan Spann does hit hard. Ryan Spann can grapple too. And, you know, he hasn't looked terrible in my opinion. I mean, the Anthony Smith loss, okay, he did look kind of bad. He was swinging pretty sloppy. If he fights like that, I think he's going to get finished here by Dominick Reyes. So I lean Reyes, kind of want to parlay him, but I think I'm just going to sit it out, be responsible. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, so I think Reyes, this deserved favorite, actually probably even could be even a bigger favorite, quite frankly. Like, I don't think much at all of Ryan Spann. The guy's got 5 minutes of cast, and that's about it. The guy doesn't have much of a chin. Durability doesn't look great. You want to talk about, you know, cashing on Ryan Spann fights? I've cashed on all 4 of his last fights on the under 1.5. Or I guess, yeah, I was looking at the Smith fight for some reason. I was thinking that went longer, but I was like, yeah, I had the under 1.5, or I think it was the fight didn't start round 3, some sort of violence prop because it was a main event. But yeah, I mean, Spann's just a guy that I target violence similar to like these other guys, Uros Medic, these Jalen Turners, guys that just go out there for better or for worse, put themselves into the fire and try to find a finish. I mean, they're just and that's kind of what I feel here in some respect. Like, I think Reyes counters him to death. I think those body kicks, money in the bank. I think Reyes finds a finish at some point. I just don't think Spann's able to implement the grappling at all either. Reyes is a solid defensive grappler. So we were talking about waiting for props to come out. I'm waiting for, hopefully, again, it doesn't start round 3. I know I see the under 2.5 is like minus 225. That's on one book. So I think the doesn't start round 3, maybe going to be like minus 170-ish range, minus 180, something like that. So that's definitely going to be a play for me.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes out like that, I'll probably play that too. I've been thinking about parlaying Reyes and Jackson. We spoke about both of them kind of just being like, we're both leaning that way, but just
I think a solid parlay, and I've kind of ended the whole parlaying, like the fight doesn't goes or the doesn't goes a long time ago. But I think a solid parlay for violence would be the Frevola fight doesn't go the distance, and then this fight going the distance.
That's
like it's probably right around even money.
Yeah, I've been shooting myself in the feet with these alternate totals that I've been trying out. I've been trying out the alternate overs, and I would have been profitable last weekend if I didn't try them out. So I'm definitely slowing down with the whole parlaying, overs, unders, fight doesn't goes. But those are 2 violent spots that I like quite a bit, honestly. So might join you there.
But, I think for me, it's just I'm a little hesitant on the 1.5s a little bit. I think the one that comes to mind for me is the Jordan Wright Dusko Todorovic fight going under 1.5, and again had his chances too. But I know like pretty much everybody in the community I know had that, myself included, had a big bet on it. Because it's only 7.5 minutes, and you got to be damn sure that there is a finish there. So,
yeah, I mean, I parlayed like a few, I think 4 of them over 1.5s, and you actually, I think you commented on the Jinyu Frey one. You said you're like, that's the most chalk one, and it's the most likely to hit. And what happened? You were 1,000,000% right. That's the one that lost. I didn't think it would end that way, but that was crazy. What a knockout, right?
Got smoked. My God.
And then Viana comes out. She 10-8s Colby Covington, and then Twitter 10-8s her.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But all right, we can move on. We can move on to this next one. This is a banger. Yep. We've got Renato Moicano versus Brad Riddell. Moicano is 16, 5-1. He's 33 years old, 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. And I've got him training. I don't have a camp, so we're going with Constrictor team, although I don't know about that. Danny, do you know any better?
Not a clue, quite frankly.
All right, so we're going to go with Constrictor team.
Yeah.
Riddell on the other side, he's 10, 3-0, 31 years old. He's 2 years younger, 5'7". He's given up 4 inches in height. It's called a 72-inch reach. They got the same reach, and he's training at a City Kickboxing. So why don't you start us off, Danny?
Sorry, give me 1 sec. Just pull the odds down again real quick. Obviously, again, like we're just sorry, I lost my train of thought here real quick. Oh, yeah. Obviously the odds, same pick 'em. It makes sense to me. Like, I think it's a really tough, close, and competitive fight because on the feet, obviously people are gonna say like, "Oh, Moicano's chinny, this and that," but like the dude's a good striker. Like, obviously, he leaves the head on the center line a little bit. I get that, but I think I give obviously the edge to Riddell in the striking here. For me, obviously, it's whether or not. I guess the big question in this fight is whether or not Moicano can implement his grappling. And to me, I think it's no, because he's not a guy who's out there shooting single legs, your traditional double legs. He's a guy that's mostly looking for your body lock, trip takedowns, which I think Riddell can stuff, quite frankly. But I guess my pause and why I think this line is more so accurately lined is because I think if Moicano ends up on his back or ends up in mount at any time at this fight, I think this fight's over. Like, I think it's quite clear, like there are levels in the grappling. But in terms of his takedown defense, I think it's solid for Riddell.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up playing Moicano here, and for me, it just came down to who's got more ways to win. Like you mentioned, I don't think Moicano's a bad striker at all, and we do hear a bunch about him being not great. I mean, he outstruck Calvin Kattar, I think by 2 times. It was like 120 to like 60, 70, 80 strikes, something like that. He's clearly not a bad striker. He's shown it in his recent fights as well. The grappling, like you mentioned, I don't know how much wrestling he's going to get off against Riddell. Riddell's got decent takedown defense. Like, I don't think you can compare Moicano to someone like Jalen Turner, who's using strength, size there. That's part of the reason he got that club and sub too. But I do think Moicano can find the sub in other ways. I think he could get it to the ground once or twice. Like you mentioned, if he gets the back, I think it's clipped. I think he could do that against the fence as well. And if I think both guys could strike, I think the striking goes to Riddell slightly, but I think that the gap is much wider in the grappling. I got to go with the grappler. Really close line. I mean, I would have liked Pick'em. That would have been great. It opened at -110 each way. That would have been beautiful, but I think I got -120. I played it for, I think, just one unit. Pulling it up real quick. Yeah, Renato Moicano. Now, I played it for 1.25 units to win 1. It really just comes down to what I said. Like, I think he's just got more paths here. I think it'll be close. I think Riddell could win. What do you think about the fight doesn't go here?
That's the thing I've been like pondering all week, honestly. But it's like another one where, like, again, like I said, like where I do think Moicano can find a finish on the mat. Both of these guys are tough. Like, I mean, and a big thing for me also is like Riddell's power really hasn't translated to UFC. I mean, the guy hasn't knocked out anybody. Guys that I thought that he could have knocked out. So could he knock out Moicano here? I mean, it's possible, but yeah, I don't know. I would lean towards the under instead of picking a side for me, quite frankly, but it's a pass altogether. It's a great fight, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think the best bet here is to just watch it. Enjoy the fight. That's probably the best move. I'm a degenerate, couldn't help it. And I'm still kind of hoping that I end up at the event. And if I do, I have to have a bet on every fight or I got to leave. So, but we'll move on.
You just got to throw together like a, a 13 or 14 fight parlay, just every single fight, some kind of like over under or money line and every fight.
I mean, I already do those every week. So it's nothing different this week. Always need the lottery tickets, man. You never know. But we can move on to this next one. I've got a bet here that I honestly don't like anymore, so we can talk about it. We've got Dan Hooker versus Claudio Puelles. Dan Hooker's 21, 12, and 0. He's 32 years old, 6 feet tall with a 76-inch reach, training out of City Kickboxing. Puelles on the other side, he's 12, 2, and 0, 26 years old, 5'10". He's given up 2 inches in height here, 72-inch reach, giving up 3 inches in reach, and he's training out of Sanford MMA, my favorite camp. Why don't you start us off, Danny?
Yeah, I got a decent bet on Dan Hooker here, quite frankly. I think he kicks the shit out of him standing. I know Claudio has some decent kicks, but that's about it. And that's kind of my big thing as well. Him setting up the wrestling here, I don't think he's going to have much success because he can't set up his takedowns because he's so poor of a striker. You see him, he's kind of just lunging out from far away. I think Dan's going to be wise to that. I actually think Dan would be more likely to get top time off of those failed takedown attempts. And that's whether or not, obviously, he stays in guard or not. But I think it's a great fight for Dan. I think he honestly just beats the shit out of him. And quite frankly, I'm shocked to see that this line is a minus 160, minus 170. I know it's a few fights back, but Jordan Levitt was minus 210 over Claudio Puelles. I mean, he was losing striking exchanges to Jordan Levitt. Chris Grutzmacher, without finding that round 3 sub, he was losing that fight. So, yeah, I think this is Dan Hooker's smash spot for sure.
Yeah. So when this line opened up, I played Claudio Puelles early. I got him at plus 170. And I was like, all right, he's got the grappling upside here. I'm not factoring in the Dan Hooker Arnold Allen fight at all into my analysis because I think it's irrelevant here. First off, he hurt Arnold Allen too. I mean, that was just who's going to fall down first. And he was down a weight class, looked emaciated. It was terrible. I don't factor that into this at all. The reason I'm getting hesitant on my bet is everything you said. I mean, Claudio, he's got decent takedowns, but he starts to get sloppy. It's going to start to fail on him. His striking, I think, is decent. I think it's a little underrated, but nothing close to Hooker. I mean, I don't think it's even comparable. Size advantage Hooker. So the first thing I did today when I was feeling uncomfortable about my bet, I was looking at the fight doesn't go. It was minus 140. I took it, played it for a unit. I think that's live. I think Claudio, all things said, could get a sub. Everybody keeps saying he's knee bar or bust. Okay, just because he got 3 knee bars doesn't mean that's the only submission the guy knows, all right? He could submit people in other ways. I think he's live for a sub. And I think Hooker's live for a KO. I think, if Hooker's really done like people are thinking, maybe Claudio's live for a TKO also. Whatever. That's why I like the under. The fight doesn't go minus 140. Right now, I think I'm probably going to hedge out of my Claudio bet. I really don't like it, man. I really don't. I'm getting super uncomfortable. I was watching the Poirier fight today, Hooker Poirier. Bro, if he's striking like that, what the hell is Claudio going to do? He's not going to be able to do anything.
Yeah, you were talking about throwing away the Arnold Allen fight. My thing is pretty much almost all of these losses. It's elite competition, and then you want to throw the Makhachev fight. Guy's world champion now, stud grappler. Throw that out. Arnold Allen fight, guy dropping down to 145. It's a brutal cut for Hooker. I don't know. Again, kind of have to throw that out. Obviously, you mentioned he did hurt him, but kind of have to throw that out because obviously we're looking at lightweight, much better for him in terms of the cut. Yeah, I think this is a Hooker. Quite frankly, a Hooker spot, and I know it seems like the line is kind of staying put-ish, which, again, to your point about being a knee bar or bust, I kind of do think he is. I kind of think he's just submission or bust, I should say. His striking is no good. His wrestling is not that great over high-level guys. I think it's a solid Dan Hooker spot.
Yeah, I'm looking at the line now. So Hooker, the money was coming in on Claudio all day. And it actually just changed. Dan Hooker's now minus 151, and the money's coming back his way. I think I'm going to hedge out. What I'll probably do, let's say Hooker's minus, let's call it minus 150. I'll probably play 1.5 units to win back 1. That way, if Hooker wins, I'm even. If Puelles wins, I still pick up point something units, 0.3, 0.2. And if the fight ends inside the distance, I'll win some money anyways. I'm extremely uncomfortable with my Puelles bet. I played it just based off of him being 170. And at the time, thinking that was live. I don't condone a Puelles bet now to anybody watching. I think Hooker is the side, and I'm probably going to hedge out. My only hesitancy is my experience hedging. I played Dricus du Plessis against Brad Tavares early. I got him at plus money. Did the tape and was like, no, I made the wrong decision. Hedged out onto Brad. And what happens? Brad loses the fight. So it's how it always goes. But I do think I'm going to hedge out, and we can move on to the next one. So for this one, we've got Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez. Edgar's 24, 10, and 1. 41 years old, 5'6" with a 68-inch reach, and he's training out of Nicolae MMA. Gutierrez on the other side, he's 18, 3, and 2. 31 years old, 5'9". He's 3 inches taller, 67-inch reach. He's got a 1-inch reach disadvantage, and he's training at a Factory X Muay Thai. So I'll start this one off. I mean, I played Chris Gutierrez fairly early. I got him at minus 150 or minus 155. Minus 155. Played it for 1.7 units. Like that quite a bit. And recently, I know some people who kind of know Edgar, who train with him. Hasn't been looking great, apparently. Been looking old. He's been looking old. Looking like someone who's going to retire. And that's another thing I want to talk about. You know, like when a fighter already says they're going to retire beforehand, I don't have stats for it, but I'm pretty sure they lose more often than not by a margin. Just thinking of MSG last year, John Vellante getting spinning kicked by freaking Chris Barnett, right? He already said he's going to retire beforehand. At the end of the day, if you know it's done, you know it's done. Sometimes you just don't have it in you. I do think Edgar's going to come out here. You know, I don't think he's coming out here just for a paycheck. I think he's going to try. But I think Chris Gutierrez is just, he's on the come up. He's the younger guy here. He's the one rapidly improving. His hand striking is a little limited. That's what I don't love. I wish he would throw more hands. He's a very kick-heavy guy. I mean, just nonstop all week, we're hearing about his leg kicks, the leg kicks, the leg kicks, the leg kicks. And I get that's his favorite weapon, but I don't think that's all he does. You know, his hands aren't bad. He's just not throwing them enough. I just think he can outwork Edgar here over 3 rounds, keep it up on the feet for the most part. I do expect him to get taken down. I just don't expect him to get held down. I think a lot of people are looking at Edgar Marlon Vera, right? Edgar won the first 2 rounds. I think most people felt that way and then got knocked out, right? If not for that knockout, maybe he would have won that fight. Can Chris Gutierrez get a round 3 KO to save the fight? Maybe, but I just don't think he's going to need it. I think he can keep it up. I think he could win the minutes. And because I've been hearing that Edgar hasn't been looking great, I sprinkled that KO prop today for Gutierrez. I got it at like plus 250, I think. Yeah, plus 250. I played it for 0.33 units, so just a little bit, but that's what I'm looking at. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, you know, you want to talk about retirement fights. I really just have no interest in betting on retirement. Like once I know it is that person's retirement fight, I really have little to no interest in betting on a side total or anything because you really just don't know what type of fighter you're going to get with them. Quite frankly, I think Frankie could make this competitive. You know, in the striking exchanges, he's got good boxing, and in the wrestling, you know, Chris does have solid first level takedown defense. But I think once you like just keep working at it, Frankie just keeps working at it. I think he can just grind him out. And once Chris's shoulders hit the mat, I think it's a round. Like I think there's a decent shot Frankie could just grind out top them here. But it's like again, what version of Frankie is showing up? So. I got no interest in betting the fight. I know somebody was telling me about the overs. I was a little paused me again. What Frankie we're getting, what game plan he's looking to implement. He's not a notorious leg kick checker, so not ideal in this matchup either. So yeah, I think it's a solid spot for Chris, but I think just the line's ballooned a little bit too wide.
Oh, yeah. I mean, now it's way too wide. I would not play this minus 223. I feel like minus 155 is quite a bit better than that. I guess one thing I would point out against Gutierrez is, you know, the Durden fight, right? Cody Durden came in on short notice, up a weight class, and still 10-8'd him in the first round via grappling. So definitely something to consider if you're going to hop in here and parlay Gutierrez at minus 223, right?
Yeah, I know it was a long time ago as well, but when he fought Raoni Barcelos on the regional scene, it's like this dude got pretty easy takedowns and was able to pretty much maul him, find a rear naked choke finish in the second round pretty easily. So guys that take a wrestle heavy game plan, which we just don't see often against Chris Gutierrez. So yeah, it's an interesting spot. It's an interesting step up because I guess you would think that Chris isn't like that kind of guy who would get this like farewell legend send off, like kill this guy for the UFC type thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't seem like this would be the spot. Like, I don't know, like a more younger up and coming guy. But yeah, I guess I'm happy for Chris. Yeah,
I think he
it's
helped
interesting.
himself
It's a
out
weird
with that.
spot.
I think he helped himself out with that Donna Bakary knockout. I think that definitely
Yeah,
helped out his hype a little bit.
yeah. That was a crazy knockout, crazy spinning back fist. It was nuts.
But all right, so we're up to the 3 top fights now. I mean, these are going to be just a lot of fun. We've got Dustin Poirier versus Michael Chandler. Poirier's 28-7-0, 33 years old. I feel like that's like the third or fourth 33-year-old. This happens like every card. 5'9" with the 73-inch reach, and he is training out of American Top Team still. Chandler's 23-7-0, 36 years old. He's 3 years older. 5'8". He's 1 inch shorter. He's got a 72-inch reach, so he's got a 1-inch reach disadvantage. And he's training out of Sanford MMA. Danny, why don't you start us off, man?
This one's pretty short and sweet for me. I think the line's about right. I think Chandler's a guy that's pretty round one or bust. The guy slows down a ton, got a lot of muscle on him. He's a guy that doesn't come out looking to wrestle either, though. I think would be a solid game plan against Dustin, but I don't think he's going to look to do that. He's going to look to stand and bang. He's a guy that's looking to have exciting, fun fights. He said that before in interviews too. He said that pretty much all the time. So I think it's likely going to be a fun, exciting fight that probably goes the distance. And I feel like that's a lot of people are like looking to maybe play the fight doesn't goes here. Like both of these guys are tough. These guys have eaten a ton of shots. Like speaking from experience, I had a fight doesn't start round 3 bet for the Gaethje Chandler fight. Guys both ate a ton of damage. So I respect the durability of both of these guys, but I do think Dustin could put him out later in the fight. But I think this is a solid fight for Dustin.
You said you bet the fight starts round 3 for that one?
No, doesn't start round 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was like, just like absolutely just clenched the entire time. It's like, well, it's one of those fights, you know. Like I was saying, like I was alluding to with like some of these women fights. Like, well, it is what it is, you know.
Yeah, I was there live, man. That was that was such a fun fight. You kind of mentioned it, like the under overs. I played the over 1.5 here. I was pretty surprised to see it there, and it was minus 130. Yeah. So I played it for 1.3 units. I mean, I get it. I get why it's there because everyone expects violence. Everyone expects something similar to Chandler Gaethje. And I do think it's going to be similar. I just expect both guys to be able to hang in there. Yeah, Chandler got dropped by Ferguson. Not a great look. Part of the reason why I like Poirier here quite a bit. I think he can counter him, find that chin. But I just think they're going to last. I think they're going to make it at least over 1.5. I think that's a decent spot. And yeah, I like Poirier as well. I don't like his current line all that much. He's minus 215 or minus 230, depending where you look. I played him at minus 178, played it for 2 units, and I'm good just leaving it at that. I feel like he's the better boxer. The wrestling, yeah, goes to Chandler. He doesn't use it much, like you mentioned. He did use it against Tony after getting hurt. So maybe that's live there. Maybe he'll mix it in here and there. It is good when he uses it. You know, he is a high-level wrestler, and he's very good at it. He just doesn't do it much. And in terms of the striking, like, yeah, he did really well against Gaethje in round 1, but Gaethje just let him hit him. Like, that's what Gaethje does. He loves to get hit, and then he turns it up and then starts rocking you instead. I just think that any shots that Chandler throws, Poirier is going to roll with them. I think he's going to land the cleaner shots. I think Poirier by decision. I'm not over here. I'm not going to be betting fight goes. I'm happy with my over and my Poirier money line.
I was actually just looking at it. Fight goes actually is pretty crazy number. It's plus 260.
That's crazy.
On FanDuel, it's plus 260.
That is crazy.
I think that's interesting. And you got the fight to start round 3 is plus 148.
Wow. Yeah, I think people are really underrating the durability of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, minus 400 for this fight to not go the distance. I mean, I guess you could look at that Gaethje fight and just see like a ton of strikes being thrown, ton of violence. But I agree with that. Yeah, totally. But for me, it's like both of these guys are tough, durable.
Where do you see minus 400?
So FanDuel has minus 380 for the doesn't go. That's what I was just saying. So they have minus 380 for the doesn't go, and then plus 260 for the fight goes.
Oh, so it must have just moved because it's
Oh,
minus
let
three.
me here. I'll refresh it then. I guess
It's
we can go
minus
ahead.
350 on FanDuel for Fight Dozen, and then plus 235 for
Oh
Fight
yeah, I
Bet.
just see that. No, yeah, I literally just refreshed it. Yeah, the
Yeah.
arrows just changed that. Yeah, but yeah, so it looks like people are hitting that starts again. Same thing starts round 3 and that fight goes.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good spot too. I mean, I'm happy with that over 1.5 just so I could stop
Yeah,
sweating after that. But I do think we go to decision, honestly,
yeah.
more often than we don't. But all right, we'll move on to this next one. We've got Carla Esparza versus Weili Zhang. Esparza's 19, 6 and 0, 5'1" with a 63-inch reach, training out of Team Oyama. Weili is 22, 3 and 0. She's 33 years old. What was I just saying about 33-year-olds? That's 4 now. 5'4". She got a 3-inch height advantage, 63-inch reach, and she's at Bangtao MMA right now, which is a great camp. There's a lot of really good fighters training over there. It's one of the coaches from Tiger Muay Thai who went and started his own thing. So I'll start this one off. Man, when when I first saw this line, I was like, I'm gonna play Esparza. I'm gonna play Esparza by decision. And I taped it and I decided not to, but I still think Esparza is kind of live. Like I played Weili, I parlayed her with Adesanya for like plus 101 for a unit, and I played a half unit on her inside the distance, just because I do think more often than not she's gonna dominate here, keep it on the feet, win the striking exchanges. But I have like a feeling in my gut telling me that like Carla Esparza is very live. I have a feeling telling me that she's gonna take down Weili. And I mean, just look at the Rose fight, right? Rose is a striker. She has good grappling, that's for sure. But she's a striker, and she took down Weili and she outcontrolled her. She controlled her for 7 minutes of that fight. Not a good look if you're coming up against Carla Esparza. I just feel like more than likely Weili will keep it on the feet. I mean, if it's on the feet, I think I'm I don't want to say I know, but I'm fairly certain she's going to win those striking exchanges. I don't see Carla Esparza winning on the feet against Weili on any planet. So, yeah, I like my spots. I don't want to risk more than 1.5 units on this just because of what I said. I do think Esparza is more live than people are giving her. Like, Esparza, I think I saw a decision like plus 600, something like that. Like, honestly, I think that's a really good spot to just sprinkle and like play it cheap. But yeah, I think Zhang wins. I think she should win this fight. I think she should dominate and win inside the distance. But I think Esparza is being a little bit disrespected here. How about you, Danny?
I'm gonna be waiting, but I'm gonna be playing Carla, 100%. Yeah. So for me, it's like 100% like the power, the physicality, the just raw attributes go to the Wiley side. I get it, but like 80%, she's 80% to beat the best wrestler in the division, a girl that literally we saw, like you mentioned, 2 fights ago, Rose goes out there, shoots 2 takedowns, or only 2 takedowns she shoots, gets both of them, and controls Wiley for the majority of the round. Well, the entire, I guess I should say, the fourth round when she shot like mid round, she controlled the rest of the round. Then fifth round she shoots. In the beginning of the round, she gets the entire round. So it's like to price that at like again 80% to me, if Carla gets her on the mat, I think it's a round. So yeah, Carla, 100%.
I'm so glad you're on her because I'm on Weili, but I'm really feel kind of have that gut feeling for Esparza, and like also another narrative thing, right? But I was there in MSG when Rose fought Weili the second time. And, you know, Weili was getting booed completely. Like it was terrible, like so disrespectful, but it's kind of expected, right? From New York, from America, I guess, with a Chinese fighter. But the only reason I'm bringing it up is because she mentioned it in her interviews, right? It affected her. She did say that. She said she didn't expect it. She didn't like it. And I remember Henry Cejudo was like training her to deal with it. He was like spewing garbage at her to try to get her to be used to
Yeah.
it. So, I mean, that's a whole narrative thing, something to consider, I guess. But yeah, I think I lean Weili, but like you, I think Esparza is very, very live here.
Yeah, I guess for me, it's like a lot of people are just thinking like, I guess price in indicative as well. It's like everybody just kind of thinks Wiley runs through her. It's like, well, like look at how Wiley has gotten her KOs, the spinning back fists, the rushing on Andrade, bull rushing her. Could she bull rush Carla? Sure. But I don't know. Honestly, I was tempted more on the, not that I'm going to bet this because I think it's pretty chalky, but Weili not inside the distance is minus 150, and I think that's honestly a better look. Because I don't think she's going to finish Carla. I think if she's going to win, it's likely just being able to stuff the takedowns, keeping it on the feet.
What books do you have that even offer that? I've like never seen that.
So DraftKings actually does. Now that I didn't know DraftKings offered that, but DraftKings offers that.
Not in New York.
Gotcha.
We get like, for some reason, like we don't get a lot of the props that everyone else does, even though we have the same books. Like we don't get, I can't bet splits. Like fighter wins by split.
Interesting.
I couldn't bet Marina, but I wanted to bet Marina round 4 or 5 or decision. Can't bet those props, which is whack. So
yeah, see, DraftKings I know for like the forfeit decision, like you were saying, usually has like 5 or decision. FanDuel's usually the only one that I know has 4-5 decision. For like what we were just saying with like the not inside the distance, I think DraftKings is the only one that I know. Like FanDuel doesn't offer that. I wish either of those books offer the spread bets. I don't have any books that offer those. Well, I think most of those are the European books. But actually, what you were just alluding to with the split decision, I actually think that could be very live here. Carla's split decision is 14-1. I think it's live.
Same. And honestly, so you were just saying like Weili not decision. You said it's minus 150.
Not inside the distance.
Oh, not inside the distance. Okay.
Is minus 150. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right. So yeah, I mean, we're kind of on the same side here, even though I bet Weili. I'm not going to be shocked if Esparza pulls this out. I know a lot of people will be, because like I've been getting in my DMs, like people are just like, Weili's going to kill this woman. She's going to run through her. And like, I don't necessarily see that. Like, I do think she wins inside the distance. There's a reason I bet it, plus 110. I liked it. I do think she can do it, but there's a reason I kept it to a half unit. Like, I don't think this is something that's already a done deal,
Yeah, you want to talk about like the damage, like on this recent run of Carla. Like the only big damage she was eating was, and I still don't know to this day why she went for it. But both at the end of the first and the second round of the Marina fight, she drops back for a heel hook. She wins the first 2 rounds pretty comfortably, easily has her controlled her, and just drops back for heel hooks. And then she eats a ton of damage both of those end of those rounds. But pretty much on this entire run, she has not eaten a ton of strikes. So yeah, I don't know. For me, it's like I don't get why a ton of people should be confident that Weili just runs through her. I think maybe it's a little biased from the Joanna fight, the last fight. But
I feel like us as MMA gamblers in general, we're very short-term memory, right? Like very, very short-term memory. And I think a lot of people are looking at Esparza Rose and just thinking to themselves, like, if this was Weili, she would have won, right? And like, you could say that, but like, you don't know that.
You could say that, but like I could also conversely say, well, Zhang has bad takedown defense. If she gets put on the mat, could be, like I said, could be around. So like similar to Rose, it could be around. So yeah, I don't know. Plus 300 seems absolutely disrespectful to Weili in this spot.
And I honestly think that it's gonna, like, right now money's coming on in Esparza, but I think that as we get closer, the parlays start coming in from the casuals. I feel like Esparza is going to blow up even more a little bit, but
true. And not to be, because everybody will be at the fights is massive pay-per-view, and not to be like a huge narrative guy. And my question for you is, because of that huge Rose scandal, like everybody thought that was, it was a boring fight, this or that. Who do you think the UFC is really pushing for the champion here? Like because Weili, I don't think they're pushing because, again, the English Chinese, maybe because they're pushing for big Chinese champion, but like in terms of her being a champion, she's not very marketable, I would think, in terms of other like marketing the Chinese as a whole. And then as far as obviously you have those boring fights, people thought, maybe Rose won. So.
Yeah, I mean, I personally feel like the UFC is probably pushing Weili just because, like, you look at that Rose fight and like when people ask Dana, are you going to make Rose Esparza 3? He's like, no. Because like Dana doesn't want Esparza to keep defending her belt. Like, it's so boring. Like, I mean, you could say it's boring. I don't even think that's necessarily the case. Like the Yan Jianan fight, like that wasn't boring. That was dominant. Right? But I feel like everyone thinks she's boring. That kind of narrative has been going on. So I do think Weili's probably the one getting pushed. And like you said, like they are looking for a Chinese champ. And as of now, she's their only chance. I mean, they've got the Leech, Li Jingliang, but like, he's awesome. Is he going to become champion? I don't necessarily think so. So, yeah, that's what I'm thinking there. But yeah, we can move on to our main event now. This is an absolute banger and one I'm very hyped to hear what you think of. So we've got Israel Adesanya versus Alex Pereira. Izzy is 23, 1-0, 33 years old. That's 5 now. 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. On the other city kickboxing, obviously for the camp. On the other side, Pereira 6'1-0. He's 35 years old. He's 2 years older. 6'4" as well. He's got the same reach as well, 80-inch reach. And he's training out of Teixeira MMA. Danny, what are you thinking for this one, man?
So this is one of the first plays I moved in on the week. So I got a unit and a half on the under 4.5 rounds, plus 140. I think this is a banger of a fight, quite frankly. I think Izzy on the feet, I get it. Pereira is super dominant, super deadly striker. You know, left hand from death. I get it. He could catch Izzy at any moment, but I think most of these minutes will be dictated by Izzy. I think solid favorite status for Izzy makes sense. I think Izzy very much will hurt him in this spot. I think Pereira is going to slow down. Big muscly guy. We've never seen him go 25 minutes in an MMA fight ever. So you're giving me plus 140. I think Izzy's going to knock him out, honestly, quite frankly. I think this is a statement performance that he needs to make in the trilogy, in terms of their 3 fights in general. Obviously, the first 2 kickboxing. And that's my big thing, too. I know they were a long time ago, but like Izzy in the second fight, Izzy was kicking his ass, had him hurt, almost had him out of there.
If not obviously, for the count, he would have been out of there, right?
Right. And that's the big thing for the count. So, yeah, I love violence in the spot because, again, that does cover Pereira catching him. But I think Izzy, it's a solid Izzy fight and solid Izzy statement performance.
Yeah, so I've seen quite a few people on that under, and it definitely makes sense because, like, A, Pereira's the finisher, right? And then Izzy, B, I agree. I think he's going to come in here with a chip on his shoulder and finally look for that KO. But my thing is, I also thought that last fight, I was like, Cannonier's the perfect guy to come in here with a chip on your shoulder and get him out of there. I mean, like, just counter-strike this guy. He's going to be looking for the big shots, find your spots, and get him out of there. Came in with the crazy intro, walking with the whole thing of ashes, and then gave a terribly boring performance. But, yeah, I'm on Izzy here too, man. I think that the narrative is carrying it here. And I also think that this happens a lot with Izzy fights. The Costa fight, for example, like everyone I knew, like the more casual crowd, my friends, like they were all over Costa. And when you ask them why, it was simply they didn't like Izzy.
Or big power, or he's got big power, he could catch him.
Yep. And
that's how I feel, yeah.
Even now, like people hate Izzy. People hate Izzy because he got glossy fingernails. People hate Izzy because he wears pearls. People hate Izzy.
The dog thing, the dog food thing, whatever the hell.
Yeah. That was weird. That was pretty weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, people have a lot of reasons to hate Izzy. I don't agree with it. I get it. I like Izzy, but I just don't think we should consider these things when we're betting. Got to be unemotional. And I just think that, you know, like you said, in their kickboxing matches, even the decision that Izzy lost, a lot of people felt he won. I don't know kickboxing well enough to come in here and say anything, so I'm not going to, but that's what people were saying. And then, you know, I don't know kickboxing that well, but I know fighting, and Izzy was definitely winning that other one where he got knocked out. So, yeah, I think Izzy's going to win this fight. I think he's just the cleaner striker. He's got the MMA experience. He's got the UFC experience. He's got we're talking about a pay-per-view, right? Like, talk about narrative. First title fight for Pereira. He's 3 fights into the UFC. Izzy's already defended his title, I think, 5 or 6 times. So he's not going to have those jitters, maybe a little bit. You know, I mean, you have to have jitters. You're fighting a guy who beat you twice. There's got to be something in there. But in general, I got to imagine it's Pereira with a little bit more jitters. Also, like, man, that video of him with the bow and arrow crouching through the jungle, like, I thought that was so cringe. People are like, yo, that's ice cold.
It was okay. It was all right. I see what I thought was cold was there was an edit somebody put on Twitter, and it was the press conference from the last fight. So when he was fighting Strickland, and I think somebody said something or whatever, and the edit was like Izzy looked like at him, and then as soon as like he was just like death staring right back at him, and then they showed the knockout. like of him getting knocked the hell out, and then it was like a
That's
cold stare down of like Izzy turning back away, and he was just, and Pereira was just like staring at him like ice cold the entire time. So that was crazy. But yeah, like I think a lot of people just don't like him because of like these boring fights, these technical like good fights. Add on top of the fact, Rob Whittaker, everybody loves. I mean, I love Whittaker. I love
I
Izzy
love
too.
Whittaker. It's
I
my
love Izzy
favorite, one
too.
of my
But
favorite fighters.
Whittaker, yeah, everybody loves Whittaker. Oh, his favorite fighter. This. I mean, the dude's a great guy overall, great fighter. And so, like beating him, well, knocking him out cold first fight, and then in the second fight, winning a close fight. You know, some people scored it for Rob, is what it is. Um, yeah, like I think people just want. There's a lot of reasons to hate Izzy, and that's why people tend to gravitate towards that. But the dude's an elite fighter. The dude's an elite finisher, and I think he's going to reign for a long time at this weight class. Quite frankly, I mean, his only loss is moving up to 205 with a much bigger guy in Yan. So,
And he only lost that because of the grappling. Like Pereira's not going to be wrestling here. Like, let's be
right.
real. I was
Right, and I think that's what's crazy to me with the under being like plus 140, not with the grappling, but what I was thinking in terms of like the just the 5 round nature of it. Like Pereira's a big, muscly like guy. Like Izzy's going to target the legs, the body, the head. Like I think the counters are going to be there nonstop. The cardio, I don't think is going to be there for Pereira in the later rounds. So
I actually
love the
wanted to
under.
talk about that because the Silva fight, the Bruno Silva fight, right? I feel like that's the most telling fight because Bruno
Yeah,
Silva had success on the feet there. Like he wasn't making the fight necessarily close with the grappling. Like he did get takedowns, but Pereira got right back up. Like the fight was close on the feet, which shouldn't be the case. Like I'm fairly confident that Izzy would pick apart Bruno Silva, and that wasn't the case with Pereira. Pereira took a bunch of shots. He overswung a few times, found himself out of position, and got countered in the third round. Like you just mentioned, slowing down. He certainly slowed down in that third round, in my opinion, completely flat-footed. So that's part of the reason I actually I sprinkled Izzy late. I sprinkled him by KO in round 4 and round 5. I got plus 3,200 and plus 37. Did it for a tenth of a unit for each one. Kind of like those because I do think he's live for a finish here. And you know, I honestly I love when people bet emotionally because it just means we're gonna get better lines. Minus 175 on Izzy. I played it for 2 units. I think it could have been higher. I think minus 250 would have made sense too. So yeah, I played him there. He's at minus 208 now. It's climbing towards him, but I think like we were talking with Weili, I think it's going to turn around once we get closer to fight time. You know, press conference, people start coming into the stadium. I think money will come in on Pereira, but we'll have to see.
Yep. It'll be interesting. I mean, again, like we were talking about with the violence props, Izzy knockout, like just straight up is plus 450. So great line by itself if you like it.
And it's just because he's had these few boring fights. Like before, he's literally got like what is it? He's got 15 knockout wins. Like it's not like he's never knocked anybody out. It's just at this level, he hasn't been really going for it. But
yeah, yep.
But all right, that's a wrap, guys. That's 14 fights. That's UFC 281. We got a lot to look forward to. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. Thank you, everybody watching live. Appreciate you big time. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Make sure you're following me at Couch Warrior Pod. Post all my picks as soon as I make them. UFC, regionals, all that stuff. And then, Danny, why don't you tell them where to find you, brother?
Yep. So you can find me, as you can see, at Danny_Lags. And then tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. Eastern, the Club and Sub podcast, the three of us, me, John, and Luke, we'll be breaking down this fight card. It's going to be a fun one. Should be a banger of a pay-per-view this weekend.
Yes, sir. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in and have a good one.